Dear listeners, welcome to a new episode of Oliver the Time Traveler. Along with Isabella, Oliver finds himself in the company of Stellara and Yuri on Mars. They are on their way to Yuri and Stellara's apartment because they have much to discuss with each other. So, without further ado, let's continue with the story. Oliver and Isabella are once again amazed as they gaze out from the corridor through the massive window, overlooking the Martian plains and into the vastness of space. They are greeted by a breathtaking spectacle of the infinite universe. The deep black backdrop is adorned with countless stars, glistening like jewels against the darkness. They see bright planets drifting through space like silver spheres. Occasionally, shooting stars streak by, like fleeting wishes disappearing into the cosmic horizon. It's an awe-inspiring sight that reminds them of the grandeur and mystery of the cosmos. A sense of wonder and humility overwhelms them as they gaze at the stars. Stellara says, "It's remarkable. Yuri and I are big fans of movies, but these views never get old. What's special about this place is that we're looking through a massive window. But the view from our balcony is not too shabby either. We love it." And she adds with a laugh. And sometimes, Yuri falls asleep on the couch after having a Mars beer. And she bursts into laughter. Yuri, looking as if he knows nothing about it, asks Stellara with an overly sweet voice, "Do you want to share more with the guests, darling, or should we continue our journey?" Oliver and Isabella laugh, and Stellara, also laughing, says, "No, darling, it's fine as it is. It's a beautiful corridor, but let's move on. It's just a few more minutes, and we'll be there." Yuri presses a button on the console of the vehicle, and the four of them glide past the massive window with its overwhelming view of the cosmos. The vehicle moves silently along the track, and Oliver asks Yuri, "How did you manage to achieve this without tracks to ride on?" Yuri replies, "We use a lot of magnetism here. It's a widely used concept. Everyone here travels on fixed tracks, so things hardly ever go wrong. There have been people who got their hands full and fell out of a vehicle or lost something, but accidents are not our thing. When you're used to being cautious all the time, it just becomes second nature. Stellara grew up here and knows very well what is possible and what isn't. I'm really new here and had to learn a lot. But it was worth it." And he looks at Stellara with a smile and winks at Oliver and Isabella. The vehicle has arrived in another, slightly larger cave where some vehicles are parked next to a beautiful waterfall. Stellara says, "If you feel like it tomorrow, we can go for a walk here. There's a large hiking area behind the waterfall, and it's lovely for relaxation." The vehicle takes a turn around the parked vehicles and the waterfall and exits the area through another exit. Yuri says, "This is the last corridor, and then we'll be in our residential area. I'm curious to see what you think of it." After a few seconds, the vehicle glides through the last corridor and stops in another cave area where a few other vehicles are parked at the edge of a grassy field with a pond. There are a few trees, and parts of the cave walls are covered in green ivy. Everything exudes an atmosphere of infinite tranquility. Yuri says, "So, here we are. Warmly welcome to Aurora Quarters. This is a quiet residential area on Mars. All residential areas are peaceful, but in other parts of Mars, you can find sports or more bustling places like the cozy city center. Here, we live peacefully. In Space Home 4, it's also calm, but there's work going on. Here, it's about relaxation. We have, among other things, a dinner comp, so we have all the conveniences." Isabella and Oliver look at the green lawn, and Isabella says, "This is truly incredible, seeing all of this." Stellara says, "Come on, let's go inside." Following Stellara, Oliver, Isabella, and Yuri walk up to a door. Stellara briefly looks at a screen next to the door. The door slides open smoothly, and Oliver and Isabella hear a voice saying, "Welcome, Stellara and Yuri." Oliver looks amazed at Yuri, and Yuri laughs, saying, "Isn't it nice? Always fun when someone says hello to you." And with a smile, they all continue further into the apartment. Through a small illuminated corridor, they enter the living area. Oliver and Isabella can't believe their eyes. They peer into a tastefully furnished living room with a couple of comfortable sofas, a cabinet with a vase of flowers on top, and a few paintings on the wall. In the room, Oliver and Isabella spot a few doors, and Yuri explains. This apartment is super comfortable. We really enjoy being here. And while pointing to one door, he continues. Behind that door is the bathroom, equipped with all the amenities you can imagine. Behind those two other doors are 2 bedrooms, and behind that door is the balcony. But first things first, make yourselves at home here. We don't know your plans yet, but consider this your home for now. Enjoy it while you're here. Isabella says. That's incredibly kind of you, really, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Yuri adds. Let's take a seat in the living room, and later, if you'd like, you can enjoy the balcony. Stellara calls from the kitchen. Feel free to leave your shoes in the hallway and take a moment to think about what you'd like to eat or drink. The dinner comp takes care of everything for us. Yuri settles down on the couch but immediately stands up and says. Please have a seat. I'll get some glasses. Would you like something to eat? What are you in the mood for? Stellara is the first to respond and says. I'd love some meteorite potatoes with moon salt. I could go for a few more. And you, Isabella? Isabella says. I'd love to join you, Stellara, they tasted delicious this afternoon. Yuri then asks Oliver. How about ordering something from your time? I've read in history books that your era had a whole culture around indulgent snacks. I've tried a croquette before. Stellara isn't familiar with it at all. People here have a very different perspective on food. But Oliver, would you like to order some snacks from your time? Yuri grins at Stellara. Oliver nods in agreement and says, that's a fun idea. Let me think for a moment, and continues. Some classic snacks from my time include popcorn, hamburgers with fries, and herring is quite popular as well. Stellara nods enthusiastically and says. I've read a lot about hamburgers with fries. I'm super curious. Yuri, if you could cook it with the dinner comp, I'll show Oliver and Isabella the bathroom and the guest room, just in case they decide to stay. At least they'll know their way around. Shall we have dinner in a few minutes then? It's going to be a wonderful evening because I'm really eager to see those so-called celestial maps. But come along, Isabella and Oliver, and I'll give you a little tour of the apartment. Stellara gets up, and Oliver and Isabella follow her toward the bathroom door, where she says. Yuri already mentioned that we have all the conveniences here. It's true, take a look. The bathroom door slides open, and Oliver and Isabella see a cave with a pool in the middle and various showers along the sides. They also spot a large cabin resembling a sauna, and the walls are covered in green ivy and colorful flowers. Stellara walks inside and says. It depends on what you're in the mood for here. As you can see, there are different showers, one with warm Mars water and another with cold salt water from Mars' North Pole. Of course, there's also a sauna. Stellara chuckles a bit and continues. These bathhouses and saunas, like the Finnish, Greek, and Roman ones, weren't a bad idea at all. Relaxation has existed since time immemorial. But as you can see, there are towels in the corner of the cupboard, so make yourselves comfortable. Stellara then exits the bathroom, and Oliver and Isabella follow her to the guest room. The door slides open, revealing 3 beds. Isabella says. You can just choose a bed if you'd like to stay the night here. The curtains close automatically, but with the press of this button on the wall, you can also keep the curtains open if you want to gaze at the stars. Stellara exits the room and looks at the table in the living room, saying, Ah, that's wonderful, the snacks are ready. Come, let's have a seat. Oliver and Isabella are still surprised at how ordinary Stellara finds everything and sit on the couch, watching Yuri and Stellara and the snacks on the table. Oliver says. With the help of just one of these dinner cups, the food problem in my time on Earth would be solved. I almost want to take one with me. Yuri chuckles and says. Your power grid couldn't handle it. He continues with a laugh. Please, dig in. I've cooked delicious food, and hopefully, you'll enjoy it. Please be critical, Oliver, especially about the taste of the hamburger with fries. Meanwhile, Stellara has already stuffed a few fries into her mouth and with wide eyes, she says to Yuri. Why haven't we eaten this before? Yuri has just taken a big bite of his hamburger, with sauce, lettuce, tomatoes, and onion spilling out from the sides of the bun. With his mouth full, Yuri says. Sorry, dear, can't talk with my mouth full. While enjoying himself and laughing, he takes another bite of his burger. Stellara, Oliver, and Isabella laugh and each take a big bite of their burgers as well. Meanwhile, Yuri, whose mouth is now empty, says. I didn't cook the meteorite potatoes because I knew there would be fries with the burgers. But I do have astrofruit with Martian ice cream for dessert. Oliver says. Yuri, it's unbelievable, but these hamburgers taste exactly like the ones I eat in my time. I can't wrap my head around how the food is so flavorful and can be served so quickly. Once we're done with dinner, I'll get out the maps. The four of them enjoy their meal and the fresh Mars water in their glasses. Dessert consists of half a watermelon filled with colorful fruit pieces, with ice cream scoops bubbling around it. Yuri laughs at the astonished expressions on Oliver and Isabella's faces and says. Well, nothing special, really, it's just the trick with carbonation. But Martian ice cream tastes sublime. And while taking a big bite of the fruit with ice cream, Stellara says. I'll go ahead and clear the table so you can lay out the maps, Oliver. Oliver chuckles and says. That's not necessary, Stellara. I don't need a table, but I'll get the maps out now. Hopefully, I can astonish you this time. Oliver, having finished his half watermelon with ice cream, takes a small wooden box from his bag and places it on the table, saying. Well, brace yourselves because the cards will be floating around us shortly. Oliver takes the leaf-shaped key from his pocket and places it in the lock of the box. The lid opens and the 8 celestial maps begin to float around the room. The soft blue glow of the cards casts a gentle light throughout the room, and Stellara says. Oh, wow, I didn't expect this. She stands up from the couch, twirling around and examining the maps carefully, adding. These are indeed celestial maps, Oliver. How did you come by them? This is truly remarkable. Yuri also stands up and looks around, initially unsure where to focus, and asks. Oliver, can we use these maps to determine our location? And Oliver says, certainly, Yuri. These maps contain a wealth of information. I myself can't stop marveling at them. But, the maps change in position and time, yet if you look at the leftmost one, do you see that rectangular block glowing? That's our current position here on Mars. Oliver continues, and on the third map to the right, do you see that ship floating through space? That's the Flying Dutchman. It will always keep sailing there, but it's trying to redeem its debt. I've been on that ship a few times. Yuri's eyes light up, and he asks. You've been on the Flying Dutchman? Oliver nods and replies. Indeed, I sailed and flew along for quite a while with Captain Van der Decken, but I much prefer being here, to be honest. Stellara gazes at the maps and asks. But Oliver, how did you manage to find us in this vastness? Oliver raises his left hand, showing the watch on his wrist, and says. Your location was stored in the memory of this watch. When I opened the memory slot, your position appeared on that leftmost map, and with a press of the green button, we were here within seconds. Yuri looks at the watch and says. Once I had found my way here on Mars and met Stellara, I traded the watch with a space trader, in exchange for some beautiful earrings for Stellara. I was glad to be rid of the thing. I had always kept it in a box, not wanting to touch it. Imagine if I were to lose Stellara. Now that I see the watch again, I still don't want to touch it, but I'm glad you know how it works, especially you. Again, I don't want to touch the thing because I'm incredibly happy here and wouldn't want to leave for anything in the entire universe. Oliver continues and says, I understand why you wouldn't want to leave here, and I understand why. Life here is so different from Earth, it's incredibly fascinating, and indeed, you have all the comforts thanks to hard work. Isabella interjects and asks Oliver, shall we find out where the next person is in time? I'm very curious. Oliver nods and presses a few buttons on the watch. The maps floating around the room change position, and the soft blue glow fades, replaced by a cold, dark grey light that shrouds the room in shadows. Oliver looks around in surprise through the floating maps, trying to find a new illuminated position on one of them. Oliver says, I've never seen this dark glow before, and I'm looking for a position on one of the maps that stands out or lights up. Do any of you see anything? Isabella says, yes, I think I see a small circle lighting up in the far corner here. Oliver walks over to the corner pointed out by Isabella and says, that's interesting. Then he sits back down on the couch. Isabella, Yuri, and Stellara look at Oliver, waiting to hear what he's going to say. Oliver continues, I've encountered or seen this next watcher before in Hollowbrook, where I come from. However, this was in a much later time. In my time in 2022, Hollowbrook was a lively small town, and after I found the watch and accidentally pressed the buttons without knowing, I was transported to the same Hollowbrook, but the entire village was deserted. Many buildings were irreparably damaged, and I lived in an inn there for a while. Oliver reminisces about the days when he was scavenging for food and says, if only I had a dinner comp back then. Isabella asks, but Oliver, which year are we supposed to go to? Maybe Yuri can tell us what happened in Hollowbrook back then. Oliver looks at the position on the map and says, we're going to the year 2901, so that's going back in time, but still in the future. Oliver chuckles nervously and asks Yuri, perhaps you can tell us why Hollowbrook is so empty and deserted in the year 2901. Yuri looks at Oliver and says, I do know, Oliver, and it's an ugly history. And Yuri takes a sip from his glass of mouse water and begins to tell. On Earth, people were busy filling their pockets. To put it briefly, many countries had a lot of war materials. Numerous wars were fought on Earth. They couldn't get enough of it. At one point, it became impossible to commemorate every war because then every day of the year would be dedicated to remembering victims. At some point, there were so many missiles made that they had the capability to destroy the Earth over 300 times. A bit excessive, don't you think? And with a serious tone, Yuri continues. Many mistakes were made in those times, and no one emerged as a winner from the battles. Many people moved away from the contaminated areas, and the period of 2901 was just after the time when everyone left and sought refuge elsewhere. A completely empty city must have been a little eerie, Oliver, or were you not scared? Oliver replies, I didn't have a choice, Yuri. I was being tossed from one place to another. I could have looked up this location long ago, but I'm glad I now have some idea of what happened there. But you mentioned contaminated areas? Please continue if you'd like. And Yuri continues. Many chemical weapons were used, and the various viruses didn't make things any better. And when too much chaos ensues, people move away. It was all so unnecessary. Humanity has managed to recover somewhat over the years. But still. And Yuri looks thoughtfully at his glass and continues. None of that misery is here. We're too happy to be sitting here and not wasting time on waging wars. Isabella and Stellara have been listening to Yuri's story the whole time, and Isabella says, the times did change on Earth, but people didn't really change. Oliver sits pensively, gazing into the distance, and says, an empty Hollowbrook, unbelievable. Everyone has moved away, and a watcher is still stuck there. He laughs and says, I guess I'll bring a fresh sandwich for him or her from the year 4361. And they all share a hearty laugh. Dear listeners, here we leave Oliver, Isabella, Stellara, and Yuri to continue their cozy conversation in the living room of the apartment on Mars. They have a lot to discuss and will be staying overnight in the apartment to continue with fresh energy in the next episode. They will need to travel to the year 2901, to what is familiar territory for Oliver, in the empty Hollowbrook. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Please like and subscribe so you don't have to miss a thing, and see you in the next episode.